We do some crazy things in Washington, but this is utter madness.
We are happy and eager to compromise, but we will not be bullied.
Day 2 of the government shutdown. No budget agreement yet, but plenty of finger pointing.
DACA dilemma. What now for the Dreamers? And immigration laws and border security. You will hear firsthand.
I am going to continue to oppose drilling off the coast of Florida.
The governor says Florida still is off the table when it comes to offshore oil drilling. But really is it? We'll take that to the roundtable.
Good morning. So great to be with you, as always. From cliffhanger to off the cliff, the last 36 hours and government shutdown framed as a fight over immigration.
The president and Republicans in Congress say the roadblock to a budget deal is what they call illegal immigration, which is code really for DACA and the Dreamers, facing a March deadline for a deal or deportation. There are about 800,000 young people brought to this country as kids who remain here undocumented. President Obama granted them legal status in 2012 that gives them the right to live here, work here, drive on our roads. But President Trump rescinded DACA in September and said Congress should pass a permanent law to protect the Dreamers.
Adrian Escarate is one of almost 33,000 Dreamers living in Florida. He came with his parents from Chile when he was 3 years old. Adrian is a master's degree candidate, a tennis player, and a coach, and he's been active in lobbying for Dreamer status.
Monica Lazaro was born in Honduras, raised in Miami. She graduated last year from FIU and now is at Nova Southeastern University. And Juan Gomez is a law professor at Florida International University. He has also worked directly with Dreamers applying for DACA and an acronym for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals.
In case anyone doesn't know that yet. Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks
Good morning.
so much for being here.
Great to have you come in.
Yeah.
Monica Lazaro, let me just ask you first, kind of on a personal level. You have been working, as has Adrian, for months and months to try to get progress on DACA, and you're still in this limbo. Are you anxious, depressed, encouraged? Where do you stand?
That's correct, Michael. First of all, thank you for having us and allowing us to have this discussion on your show. It's definitely very nerve-wracking and creates a lot of anxiety to know that one day I may be here, one day I may not. Now that we have that we can renew our DACA, that's a relief, but it's just a Band-Aid. It's not a solution. So we still want to know what the long-term plan and long-term solution will be.
For people who aren't following this every single day, well, the shutdown part is really what the news is today, but you had mentioned now that you can renew. That's a court decision. Adrian, you and I spoke when President Trump rescinded DACA, which the court has now said, okay, you can renew for now. The president's taking that to the Supreme Court to see if that's going to be overturned. But when we spoke, I mean, suddenly your life sort of was upended, and I want to give people sort of a sense that you've been here since you were a kid. Yeah. So when that happened, I mean, as it stands now, and now that DACA is sort of the linchpin in the fight over government funding, what is that like for you on a daily basis?
It's as Monica said, it's very nerve-wracking. You're watching the news. I've been watching C-SPAN like I've never have before. I never used to watch that channel. But yeah, we're just trying to see what happens if they finally come up to a compromise, which is what we want. We never wanted a government shutdown, and especially for them to pin a government shutdown on our situation. So we just want the legislators, the senators, Congress people to come up with a solution that's going to help us out, and so we can finally be here permanently.
Yeah, Professor Gomez, you have worked for a long time with Dreamers like Monica and Adrian, and there still are a lot of people in South Florida, across the country, who are looking at these young people who have grown up in this country, are as American as my children, or Gletta's children, your children, and yet they kind of say, well, yeah, well, they came here illegally, they ought to go. What do you say to those people?
Well, first of all, they're children. They came in as children. They had no control whether they came or they left. But the issue is that you have these 800,000 or so. You have others who are not identified yet.
Right.
And
Those were the 800,000 who registered.
But then, even within that group, you have the instability that is a typical pattern of this administration. For example, on Saturday, they announced we will allow people, for now, to continue registering. On Tuesday, the first day of regular work this week, they say we're appealing. And so then that creates fear, that creates instability, and it is difficult for young people, it is difficult for their advocates to be able to help, because you don't know what to tell someone. You don't know. You can't build a future on constant instability.
Can we, as we speak, put up a tweet from the president this morning? He's been tweeting about this copiously over the weekend. This tweet latest this morning, about 2 hours ago, where the president said, "It's great to see how hard Republicans are fighting for our military and safety at the border. The Democrats," he says, "just want illegal immigrants to pour into our nation unchecked. If this stalemate continues, Republicans should go to the 51% nuclear option and vote on real long-term budget, no CR, no continuing resolution." And there's a lot to unpack in that tweet, but for our discussion purposes, I mean, it's worth it to say that the Dreamers, the deferred action recipients, it's a far different case than an illegal immigrant, as many people talk about. So, Professor, seeing this, 8 in 10 Americans, Republicans and Democrats, favor some kind of progress to get people who are Dreamers to some legal status, whatever that might be. Is it fair to ask, should it be part of a decision on funding the government?
The other day, Senator McConnell said that Senator Schumer was holding the government hostage, and that is wrong. We should be negotiating practical solutions. And the problem is that there have been constant promises of we will address. Well, March 5th will come and go, and nothing will happen if something does not happen. This is a question of doing the right thing. The president should really stop the inflammatory language. The president should really listen to reasonable Republicans like Senator Graham and try to reach a solution. We're not talking about just the 800,000, but the question is, you can't give the 800,000 a solution and then punish their families so severely that you put poison pills in the legislation. They can't do that.
Monica, I want to say that I had the pleasure of meeting you through some mutual friends last year. We've had some conversations, and I came away from them thinking, gee, this is the kind of young person we want in this country. If you had a chance to sit down with the president, I know you wanted to, in fact, sit down here with Carlos Curbelo, the congressman, a couple of weeks ago when he could not be on, however. What would you say? What is your argument to say, look, I'm as American as anybody else. I embrace the values of this country. I want to live here legally, lead my life?
Right, so I think he put it correctly. The inflammatory language is perfect, because if I could sit in front of him right now, I would tell him, really all I want to do is not be anxious and study and start preparing for my DREs so that I can start graduate school next year.
Graduate record exam, go to grad school?
Correct. If I could, if I could tell him what I really want to do right now is just start graduate school, is keep working, let him know that I do pay taxes. And I would not mind showing him how much I pay for my Social Security taxes and even my health insurance, and that a lot of the people are misinformed, in part by the media, by just all these tweets that we get we get financial aid, loans. We do not get health insurance. We have to pay completely out of pocket for health insurance. And, we just want to work.
So, Adrian, this idea that somehow Dreamers are mooching off American taxpayers, what's your response to that?
That's completely false as well. Just like Monica is saying, like we've been paying taxes even before DACA was in place. We can apply for international taxpayers' ID numbers, and we pay taxes, and we don't get any tax returns in return. So that's completely false. And the narrative that has been going on the past few days, labeling us as illegal immigrants again, while a few months ago, even Trump himself was, the Dreamers, we want to help the Dreamers, we want to protect the Dreamers. Now it's back to the narrative of, illegal immigration. So it's just so they can cater to their bases, cater to the anti-immigrant rhetoric that has been going on, and I think it's very unfortunate that this is happening because it completely takes away from any deals or compromises that can happen.
It's worth it to put an exclamation point on that is that the president has been all over the map and said verbatim, we love our dreamers, and has actually backed the Graham-Durbin bill that we'll talk about when we come back in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Live in our studio this morning, two dreamers, Adrian Escarate and Monica Lazaro, Professor Juan Gomez from FIU. This week, there was a so-called field hearing, which brought a number of members of Congress to Miami to talk about Cuba. Glenna covered that meeting. One of the people at that meeting was Senator Marco Rubio, and we really have not heard from him definitively on DACA, but he finally spoke. Here's what Senator Rubio said.
You cannot shut down the U.S. government over DACA. The current status of DACA, number one, according to a court order that I disagreed with, primarily on the Constitution and the law, I do think the president has a power to end this, whether you agree with them or not. But even under the terms of the president's announcement, the deadline is in March, not January of this week or Friday of this week. Number two, I do not believe you can shut down the government of the United States over DACA. In fact, one of the implications of doing so is the government will no longer be able to process the permits that people are applying for.
So that was Senator Rubio, and for the record, our guest could not hear what you heard, but Professor Gomez, what the senator was justifying why he was not going to vote for a government shutdown, not because he doesn't support dreamers, but because one of the reasons is the irony of not funding the government would also not fund the processing of DACA renewals. And you know, my estimation when we were in the hallway with Senator Rubio is it was two different items to him.
And misinformed. CIS is a fee-based driven agency, so CIS does not shut down.
CIS
for Citizenship and Immigration Service.
Immigration Service.
People need to understand that immigration is mostly a fee-driven operation. Individuals pay to have their applications processed, and so it's not an agency that will necessarily be affected.
Are CIS agents working right now? Today is Sunday,
well,
obviously.
Sunday, but they will be. I mean, there is no notice of any shutting down from any of the other agencies are considered priority agencies. So there is no shutdown. That's the issue here, that they're trying to scare the public, and it's not true. The issue is the government is still operating to the degree that it needs to. There are operations that do not happen, but
Can I ask you all, Adrian, Monica, for your impression and a question I asked earlier, as living this sort of hell firsthand, do you think it's appropriate to put your fate and the DACA issue in a government funding issue and debate and have the government shut down over that? What do you think about that?
As Adrian had mentioned earlier, you know, we didn't necessarily want a shutdown. We just want a solution, and so I don't feel, as a dreamer, I don't feel happy that we're being used, you know, as that coin that they keep tossing and saying, you know, we're doing this for the dreamers. All we really are asking is for a solution, a long-term solution, so that we can just keep on with our lives. I don't appreciate being used as collateral.
Yeah, and there's bipartisan solutions in the House right now and in the Senate that can pass if it's brought onto the floor. There's been senators and representatives that have come out in support of it, and they think that it would garner enough votes to be able to pass. So it's just unfortunate that they keep using the DACA recipients and the Dreamer narrative to their disposal, and they say that there's no urgency in it as well. There is urgency. There's 122 Dreamers that are losing status every day, and 15,000 to 16,000 that have already lost it since September 5th.
And so it's March 5th, I believe, is it not? Where that is the end date, where if Congress has not acted, then you are all subject to deportation.
Yeah, after March 5th, there's 1,300 Dreamers, 1,300 Dreamers that lose status every day.
On a daily basis.
On a daily basis.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the Washington Post company professor this morning, the Washington Post, great newspaper, has a poll this morning, and it says 87% of Americans favor protections for dreamers. So I think that the public support is overwhelming on behalf of people like Monica and Adrian.
You have even organizations like Fox News who have polls who say that over 80% of Americans favor some road to citizenship. We have been vetting Dreamers for years. We have been vetting TPSers for years. We have approximately 11 to 12 million, depending on who you ask. We need to address that issue, but we also need to understand that we cannot poison our own immigration system with this self-destructive legislation proposed by Senator Cotton that is anti-family, that is anti-business, that is anti-American. Mr. Miller in the White House, Stephen Miller.
Yeah.
What they are proposing is not American. It is not in our tradition. It does not make sense to regress. It does not make sense to impose systems that will hurt us.
I would simply say that the major issue on which Donald Trump was elected was an anti-immigration message, and it resonated with the American voters, and he was elected. But he's made an exception for DACA. I mean, the problem, Monica and Adrian, is that the president has been all over the place, very inconsistent. I mean, he says he loves the DACA kids, and then the next moment he's equating you with somebody sneaking across the border in Nogales.
Yeah, Senator Schumer, the day of the shutdown, had a personal discussion with Donald Trump, and he even said that he would put the whole border wall funding on the table and that they still didn't take it. And what people in the inside say that Donald Trump had agreed to it, but then he goes back to his base, he goes back to Stephen Miller, he goes back to Cotton, he goes back to Perdue.
General Kelly also
and
seems
General
to
Kelly
be
as well.
A very strong supporter of not funding DACA, not
so then
covering DACA.
We're back to square one and no agreement, no compromise, and it's something that has to stop. They actually really have to get this done because the government is shut down, and that's not what we want.
We want to invite you to keep in touch with us as this process continues. Professor as well, thank you so much for being with us. Stay tuned, I suppose.
Yeah.
Right?
Thank you.
We will be in touch with you over the coming days and hope that there's a happy solution for you. All right, coming up, this video taken moments before Venezuelan police officers killed a rebel officer. It has intensified the push for sanctions against the Maduro government.
A live report from our correspondent in Caracas is next.
As Venezuelan security forces descended on his hiding place on Monday, a Venezuelan rebel officer named Oscar Perez posted some dramatic videos on social media in real time.
Perez died in that assault. He was wanted for his role in last year's anti-government protests. He stole a police helicopter. He tried to lead a rebellion against the Maduro government, and for that reason was a wanted man. The video that you are looking at is renewing worldwide calls for sanctions against the Venezuelan government. We are trying to put in a live report for you from our correspondent in Caracas, Cody Weddle. As you can imagine, technology is spotty, and so far we have not been able to find him. And so we are going to work on that, and we will take a quick break and be right back with you. Stay tuned. Great news for us. We are now able to connect with Cody Weddle right there in Caracas. Cody, we just saw the video that Oscar Perez streamed earlier this week of the attack in which he eventually was killed by government forces. Tell us, what is the reaction there in Venezuela? Do people there even know that that was streamed on social media? Did they see that?
They did see that, Glenna. You know, Oscar Perez really gained a reputation here as a dramatic person, a Rambo type. He even starred in an action movie here before, and he really went out in that same style. It felt like a real-life action movie here. He was posting videos on his Instagram account on Monday. He posted around 12 videos, and in those videos you can see he is bloody. You can hear gunshots in the background, and eventually he would die in that attack along with 6 others. And he also said in that video that he wanted to turn himself in. He said also that police were using rocket-propelled grenades to attack them, and eventually he would die along with those 6 others. You'll remember Oscar Perez really shot to fame last year at the height of those protests. As you said, he stole that police helicopter. He overflew Caracas. He shot at the buildings below. No one was injured or killed in that attack. And following this incident on Monday, Oscar Perez, when he was killed, the opposition is saying this constitutes a violation of human rights. They're saying it was an extrajudicial killing because Perez was saying he wanted to turn himself in, but they ended up killing him. The government responding saying that he was a terrorist and that he deserved to die because of that. But the opposition saying he wasn't given due process. Because of this, talks between the government and opposition have been derailed. They were scheduled to continue in the Dominican Republic, but they were derailed. Opinions here were really mixed on Oscar Perez. Some people said he was looking for his 15 minutes of fame, and other people said he really did what no one else wanted to do. All of this coming as with the backdrop here as the situation here continued to deteriorate in the first few weeks of this year. Hundreds of lootings have been reported across the country. Severe cash shortages continue. People can't get their hands on cash anymore. They're paying up to 40% just to get cash. So imagine if you were to go to a grocery store or a local merchant, you pass your debit card for $140 and they give you $100 because of the cash shortage. That's what's happening right now with people who have the money to do that just to have a cash. And it's partly because we now know that hyperinflation here, Glenna, has officially set in.
Cody Weddle in Caracas. Sounds pretty desperate down there, Cody. We are glad that you are reporting for us. Stay safe.
Thanks, Cody. And now time to sit down with our roundtable for a distinguished panel of South Florida journalists and political activists and attorneys to weigh in on the news of the week. Introductions first.
We have got a great group for you this morning. Let's tell you who is here. That is Jacqueline Charles, our friend Jackie Charles, reporter with the Miami Herald, covers the Caribbean. Saman Mosavagi, if I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. Gonzalez is founder and managing attorney at the Florida Immigration Law Council, and Jay Narang, business executive in Broward County. He sits on the executive committee of the Republican Party of Florida.
Good morning.
Great
Ms.
to have
Mobasagi.
you. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Well, we are talking about the big topic of the week, the showdown, the shutdown, in its second day over essentially DACA. Jackie Charles, you cover the Caribbean. You've been heavily involved in the coverage of TPS, temporary protected status, for different groups. And I think it's worth a conversation about how DACA and other immigration issues like TPS are very different issues, are they not?
They are very different issues in terms of passing immigration reform. What I find to be so interesting about this current debate is that General Kelly, when he was in charge of DHS, he called for a legislative fix on the TPS issue. There are other calls from members of Congress for a legislative fix when it came to DACA. Here we are today. There's a discussion on the table about DACA, and legislators want to provide that fix, but a lot of it is getting lost in the rhetoric and also in the blame game.
Yeah. Well, Saman, it's pretty obvious in South Florida, and Jay, hold on, we're going to get to government shutdown in a minute. But I think that the issue of DACA and TPS has been conflated. I mean, we saw a march this week, Tuesday night, downtown Miami, hundreds of people who are both TPS beneficiaries, recipients, and DACA kids were out there, but in fact, they're separate issues pretty much, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, yeah, they're completely separate. I mean, TPS is temporary protected status for individuals from countries that have suffered major
Salvador,
Haiti. And Haiti earthquakes. They've suffered disasters, whereas the DACA are children who have been brought into the United States under the age of 16, who have either completed high school or in the process of completing school. And both programs, you have to, there's a vetting process for both of them. These aren't criminals that are going around getting work permits, and these are people who have gone through background check, name check. They have, they can't have a conviction of a felony, and they're given an opportunity to stay in this country and work and be part of the fabric of the United States. And here we are in a position where the government is saying, no, we don't want to talk about it right now. We're going to talk about something else. But this has been the platform the whole time, and now we're here, and it's crumbling in front of us.
Right. But that's something new. I mean, this is something that's been going on for the longest time. The DACA kids are the piñata that Democrats have used every time and delivers candy every time. I mean, in 2008, when they had the full majority and President Obama was the president, they had the opportunity to fix that, but they did not do anything until 2012 when they go in, then there's the executive order, and now again, because Trump administration is doing so well and it was their first year anniversary, all they did was again went back to that piñata and they beat it up and tried to deliver some more candy out of that.
Well, can I just say that there were, as recently as a week ago when we talked about it on this program last Sunday, there was a deal. There was a reachable compromise that kind of blew up for reasons that I'm not sure any of us still understand. But it is a bipartisan effort here.
Exactly, and despite that deal, when they did not have full agreement on things, because what President Trump is looking for and what the Republicans are looking for is a comprehensive reform of the immigration issue, because what happens with the DACA kids, okay, we fix that and we give them a pathway to legalization. What's next with the 62,000 kids that came in last year? Or the other 20 or 30 or 40,000 kids that come in this year. So the problem is that there needs to be a comprehensive reform, and that's what's...
all right, well, but Congress has failed, as you all know, has failed for years to deal with comprehensive reform. Senator Rubio, part of his kind of reluctance to get too close to this very hot issue is that he got burned on it once before when he was part of the Gang of Eight. Jay, I really think that and what the Dreamers earlier were saying, and Professor Gomez, is that the president has been all over the place on Dreamers. He said, we love these kids, we're going to take care of the Dreamers, and then suddenly at that meeting where Senators Graham and Durbin showed up at the White House January 12th, believing that they had a deal in front of them, that's when the whole thing just, went down the tubes.
And that's because the president is looking for a comprehensive reform, not to keep going
Is it
back
comprehensive reform or he wants to cherry pick?
No.
Because some of the things he's talked about is the border wall, cutting off family reunification. That's not comprehensive immigration reform. Well, that's just cherry picking a few issues that are touchstone issues that you want to deal with.
Off family reunion issue, but really it's chain migration. That's what he's after. He wants to fix that because that's bringing in some parts of terrorism into this country, and that's one of the things he's looking at. But at the end of the day, this whole shutdown that has happened, the Schumer shutdown, it is not because of any of those issues, because in the CR that came to the Senate from the House,
continuing resolution for the budget,
it did not have anything to do with DACA. It did not have anything to do with any of these issues. All it had was the budget, and number two was CHIP, the child health care insurance program for the kids. Yeah. So what is more important? And that's the thing that the president is looking at. He's, he's saying that unless you fix it, and as anybody in business or any other field, you're going to look at your boat sticking on water. You want to fix the leak first, as opposed to just kind of going in there and creating buckets to keep that water everywhere.
Simon, I think to say the obvious about the politics of this, the Democrats see that they finally have some leverage.
Yes.
The president's approval rating right now is 36%, lowest of any president at the end of a first year. So despite your assertion, Jay, that he's been doing great, and there have been some good things. I mean, the economy's going crazy. Wall Street is in great shape. Other things, I agree. But the Democrats see a chance to finally get DACA passed, and they are using this as a wedge issue. I mean, whether you like it or not, that is simply how politics works.
Yeah, and this is what they're facing right now, and I think that they should take that opportunity to try to get this issue resolved. I mean, we've been talking about immigration and DACA for the past year and even way before it, and now they're in a position, like you said, where they do have the leverage to go ahead and get something. And we're not talking about, we're talking about children who already have status in this country. Right. They're not illegal immigrants here.
No, they are. They're illegal
No, they're not
aliens.
illegal immigrants.
No, they are illegal aliens, but because they have been granted the deferred action, as a result, they have legal status.
That's not a fair statement at all.
Their grievance is not with the Congress or the American citizens.
I think you bring up what is the essential question here, is that they are technically undocumented, yet for no reason of their own and as a humanitarian humanitarian gesture, there is a difference between their situation and someone who has chosen to come illegally.
True,
That's sort of
and this is why they are
But their gripe
DACA.
is not with the United States Congress or with the United States citizens. Their gripe is with their parents who brought them here illegally. Their gripe is with the countries that do not have the democracies that can support.
Give us a legislative fix, and today we have the opportunity to do that, and instead it's getting lost in the rhetoric of the blame game.
Exactly.
Because
and
you
the
keep changing the goalposts.
And the Schumer shutdown is
or
is
Schumer says
completely-
negotiating with the president is like negotiating with Jello. It's impossible.
Well, it's politics. Welcome to midterm 2018.
Jay,
That's
can I
what's
ask
going
you
on.
a personal question?
Yes.
You were born not in the United States.
Yes, sir. I'm a legal immigrant to this
All right,
country.
and so you got in line. You followed the absolute procedures one must follow to become, get a visa to come to the United States, and became a naturalized citizen.
And I'm proud of this. This is not, it's kind of like winning the lottery, and that's one thing that people need
All
to
right, so,
understand.
I mean, good
It's-
for you for following the process,
get rid
but,
of the lottery,
I mean,
too.
you look
Right.
at these two young people who were
what did
sitting
you say?
here.
I said he wants to get rid of the lottery also, the president.
All right, all right, so you
I have
look at
nothing
these two outstanding, this young man, this young woman who
Wonderful
were just here.
people.
And, they've been raised since the age of 3 and 5.
Agreed.
I mean, they are as American as anybody else.
I agree.
Why shouldn't they be allowed to stay?
They should definitely be allowed to stay, and that's not what I'm saying. That's not what the president is saying. What he's saying is comprehensive reform, so that there's no more kids that are placed into this same
Yeah, but
situation
he told,
over and
all
over
right,
again.
I don't mean to make this you and me here, but, on January 9th, the president met at the White House with a whole group of congressmen and allowed TV cameras into that meeting. And at some point in the meeting, he said, bring me an immigration deal. Any deal protects DACAs. I will sign it, even if I don't like it very much. What happened to that president?
Negotiation. That's what it is. He wants to make sure that there's comprehensive reform. He wants to make sure that the holes that are in our immigration system are plugged. That's what he's looking for, and that's not what he's getting at his desk.
Time to take a break. We'll continue this, promise, in a couple of minutes. Stay with us.
Back on the Sunday morning live in our studio, a very robust roundtable. And Jackie Charles, let me ask you, as you well know, TPS for Haitians who came here post the earthquake, there are roughly 58,000 of them, and they have been told that TPS has been taken off the table. They must go back. July 2019 is the date for them to go back. But I was talking this week with a number of Haitian leaders and Haitian American leaders who are pleading that it be extended, and as much as your heart goes out to them, I think that's a very faint possibility.
I agree with you. I mean, I feel that it's a very faint possibility, especially when we've seen what has happened in the last couple of weeks, and especially in terms of the alleged comments that were made in a meeting in which the issue of TPS for Haitians and El Salvadorans was brought up. But
And
yes,
the president made his vulgar comments
Yes.
reportedly. Why do we need more Haitians? Take them out, was the quote from Dick Durbin.
Yes. And so when you think about that sort of thinking, and then after that, we had the decision on the H-2A and H-2B visas in regards to Haiti.
Explain
so
what that means.
these are seasonal visas that are given to people in Haiti to come and work on farms or to come and work in your resorts. Trump, for instance, he has a number of employees who are under H-2B visas. They are not American citizens. They don't live in the United States. They live in foreign countries, and they are actually requested by business owners in the United States. This has been going on for decades. They come in, they work for a couple of months, earn income, and then they go back to their countries. So Haiti qualified, was reinstated after the earthquake as a means to assist Haitians, especially farmers. And we have 65 individuals who were there. They've been there since 2012. But the Department of Homeland Security, working with the Department of State, decided this week that they are no longer going to allow Haiti to apply for those visas. So a lot of people...
And the reason, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
But the reason, Saman, is that DHS, Homeland Security, said they overstay these visas. They get here to work for 3 or 4 months, pick apples in Washington or crops in another state or do some kind of labor. They send the money back, a lot of money for Haiti. But DHS says they overstay the visa and therefore they're not reliable to be recipients these guest worker visas.
Right. So there's a whole list of countries actually that are allowed to be on these, allowed to obtain these visas, and there's people from all of these different countries that also have those issues where they'll overstay or they'll marry or they'll continue to stay in the United States. But there's a big majority of them too that will return back to their country because they know that this is a mechanism for them to come back to the U.S. and work on that visa and then return back. And they're allowed to stay here for 9 to 10 months at a time, and then they go back and then they have the same employer apply for them again. It's kind of like it's the seasonal peak load worker visa.
One of the things I believe, according to DHS, was that that program, H2A and H2B, is primarily managed, the processing part, by the home country. And for example, Jamaica has a robust program and that works really well. However, with Haiti, the management has not been that effective. That's one of the statements from, or one of the things that I believe DHS is kind of looking
Well,
at.
I spoke to an economist who actually studied that program, and he highlights the fact that the original group that was put into that program, they are still there and they have gone back, and that part has been managed effectively. And there's been questions about DHS statistics on the number of Haitians who actually overstay. So I think with this issue, it was the timing.
And I agree with you that the violations, as you were saying earlier when we were sitting in the conference room there, is that there's not been any kind of violation with those 65. However, that is not such a vast program just yet. And that might be a legal way to bring in Haitians that want to be here and then send them back as needed, as you were explaining the H2A and H2B.
Right. You know, the larger issue, if I may, of the economy in South Florida is that not only people who have been living under temporary protected status, but also a lot of the dreamers who are working. The Miami-Dade School Union says there are some 20,000 teachers in schools who are DACA recipients. The hotel industry employs construction, a large, significant percentage of people who are here on temporary protected status who have been here for decades. So temporary is sort of a loose word.
And they have children who were born in this country and are now American citizens.
So on the economy, though, that's a humanitarian part, but South Florida economy being what it is, Saman, what happens when all these workers disappear?
Well, that's a good question. I have a lot of clients who come in who talk to me all the time. Their TBS is going to be expiring soon, or their DACA is going to be expiring, and what are they going to do? Yet they're not married to a United States citizen to have that petition in order to continue to stay in the United States, but they have other ties here. They work, they pay their taxes, or they have children here, and they're not in a situation where they can return back to their country. I mean, they've been here for so long.
But specifically for the people who are running businesses here, and corporations,
to
what
answer
happens?
the economic aspect, I think what's going to happen is that the wages are going to go up. We were talking about it earlier, that the issue is that American workers don't want to take those jobs.
Yes.
They're mostly minimum wage jobs. So what's going to happen is that the businesses will have to go with
Is that a guess, or is there some kind of empirical evidence that shows that that will happen?
No, that's just an educated guess based on how the business functions.
So that businesses have preventing the minimum wage from going up because immigrants have been in those jobs. That doesn't seem to be very logical. I think that
I did not say minimum wage. I did not say minimum wage. I said that you guys mentioned earlier that most of these jobs that are the H2A and H2B, they are taking minimum wage jobs. So what I'm saying is the wages are kind of low for those individuals, and that's probably why the American worker is not taking those jobs.
If we can,
so the wage goes up.
We have only about 45 seconds left, but I do want to say another big story, and I'm sorry to give it short shrift, but this week it appeared from testimony before a congressional committee that maybe Florida is not off the table when it comes to oil drilling. I asked the governor this week. He says now Secretary of the Interior Zinke's going to keep his word. Do you think, Jay, that in fact, who Zinke told the governor, Governor Scott, it is off the table? Are you willing to accept that it is?
Well, there's some more evidence. Heather Swift, the spokesperson for Department of Interior, she made a statement as well that Walter Crankshift. I just butchered the guy's name.
It's harder than Mova
yeah, so he made the statement that they still need to complete the analysis. So it's probably the analysis that they need to finish before they take Florida off the table. And I think I would accept the statements made by
Secretary Zinke and
okay,
the
we're
promise
off,
by the-
perhaps.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you all. Great roundtable.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, the opening of Brightline train service was marred by deaths on the tracks. What should happen now? That's next. Take a look at this screen. Wherever you are in South Florida, we have a tower cam for you.
Lots of pictures, and here is Weather Authority meteorologist Jennifer Correa with your Sunday forecast. Jennifer, hi.
Hi, Michael. Hi, Glenna. Good afternoon, South Florida. So clouds are actually starting to break apart. We're seeing a little more sunshine, helping to warm up these temperatures up to 79 degrees in Hialeah. So almost getting to the 80-degree mark in a few spots. Live view out of Fort Lauderdale's tower cam still looks rather cloudy, but looks like the rain has definitely dried out. So only a few showers are north of Broward in Palm Beach County, but Broward down through Miami-Dade, we are dry at the moment. Lots of cloud covers, though, for the Keys, and that's going to stay like that for the rest of the afternoon. Highs will stay in the upper 70s, maybe a light drizzle here and there. That rain chance does go down, especially for the start of the new week. A weak cold front comes our way. On Wednesday, will be windy after that.
Jennifer, thanks. In an almost unbelievable turn of events this week, the splashy opening of Brightline's express train service in South Florida was hijacked by consecutive deaths on the tracks. In its first week, 3 people were hit by trains in separate instances. 2 were killed, and 2 others were killed on the tracks during Brightline's test runs in the last 7 months. The calls for investigations are underway. Both Senators Nelson and Rubio are asking for a federal transportation investigation. At least one Florida congressman wants service suspended. Brightline's billion-dollar-plus in federal bonds reconsidered. The deaths have become a rallying cry over the new train service, controversial in some ways from the get-go, in neighborhoods split by tracks, for the company's handling of environmental studies, and where they fear fast trains and loud horns compromise quality of life. But the evidence shows the pattern of the problem. All 5 people, the 4 killed and 1 who lived to tell about it Friday night, everyone chose to circumvent safety features in place and cross the tracks while the train was coming. Investigators in all 5 instances confirm what Brightline's COO told Local 10's Todd Tongan on Friday, that crossing gates and audible warnings were in place and functioning.
The Brightline's equipment was in working order in every one of those situations.
100%, Todd. Everything worked exactly as was intended.
Brightline's trains share century-old Florida East Coast Railway tracks, but they travel twice the speed. The at-grade crossings in some neighborhoods cut right through pedestrian and bike traffic. Attention and oversight to any transportation industry is critical, especially where big money is made. A report from Florida Tax Watch this week estimates Brightline service will add about $6 billion a year to Florida's economy over the next decade. Our hearts go out to the families of those killed, those who've lost their lives, those who've been injured. Even 1 death warrants a review of practices and protocols of this new service. But you cannot legislate common sense, and you can't blame train service for the fatal decision of someone who tries to beat the train. We want to know what you think about that or anything in the news.
You can weigh in rather on any topic. Email us, Facebook, Twitter, any of these addresses. We're easy to find. Love to hear from you. Remember, stay informed, get involved.
And have a beautiful Sunday. Thanks for being with us.